Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most anticipated and emotional moments in the entire series. So grab your tissues, because we're talking about the grand finale and the reunions we've all been waiting for. First up, let's talk about Xilan and Rouge. Their story is one of quiet sacrifice and unspoken love. Empress Lexu remained unforgiving towards Bai Qian. Bai Qian, however, knelt before the Hua's parents, seeking their permission to personally bathe the Hua's body to send him off clean and pure. Meanwhile, Lian Song arrived to congratulate Fengju on her ascension to the throne as the new Empress of Qing.
Fengju explained with a heavy heart that this was an arrangement made long ago.
Back when her aunt, Bai Qian, was planning to marry into the heavenly palace. Now, it all seemed tragically unnecessary. After meticulously bathing the Hua's immortal body and dressing him in his finest robes, Bai Qian leaned down and gently kissed his cold lips. A bitter laugh escaped her. She was the queen of Qingku, and he was the crown prince of the celestial tribe. How could she possibly force him to stay with her in the fox cave? She suddenly remembered something the Hua had once told her. He said that in his entire life, the only person he ever envied was his second uncle, Sang-ji. At that moment, Bai Qian finally understood the depth of his words. If he wasn't the crown prince, and she wasn't the queen, they could have stayed together in the fox cave, hidden away from the world, forever. Tears streamed down her face as she lamented her own fate. My identity is truly awkward, she cried. When she was immortal, Su, she wasn't worthy of him. Now, as a high goddess and queen, she still couldn't keep him by her side. Wiping her tears, she leaned close and whispered to him, her voice filled with regret. She confessed that when he stood guard outside her fox cave for 7 days and 7 nights, her heart had already softened. She had already forgiven him. Her pride, her status as a goddess, was the only thing that held her back from admitting it. The Hua, she whispered. You've suffered so much over these past few hundred years. As the Hua was gently placed into the crystal coffin,
Bai Qian instructed the heavenly clan members with a fragile voice. He's sleeping very soundly. Please, be gentle.
She then turned to the heavenly lord, her eyes pleading, asking if she could accompany them to the boundless sea. But her request was denied. The boundless sea was a sacred ground for the celestial tribe, a place where outsiders were not permitted. As the procession began to leave Qingku with the Hua's coffin, Bai Qian's composure shattered. She stumbled out of the cave, chasing after them, until she collapsed to her knees, her anguished cries of the Hua echoing through the mountains. Fengju, having witnessed the tragic departure, followed the procession all the way back to the heavenly palace, her heart heavy for her aunt and for herself. She waited patiently outside the palace gates. When the emperor, Dong Hua, finally emerged, she rushed to him, her voice filled with concern for the injuries he had sustained at the Ruoshui River. Dong Hua simply told her he was fine.
Then he looked at her, his ancient, unreadable eyes filled with a profound sadness.
He told her that if he had Yuan personally erased her name from the 3 live stone all those millennia ago, he would have loved her. Fengju was stunned into silence. He continued, explaining that his descent to the mortal realm to undergo a love tribulation wasn't just for her. It was to fulfill a personal wish, to experience a love he could never have as a god. With those words, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone. Fengju had finally heard the word love from the man she had pursued for so long, but it came with the cruel finality that their fate was sealed. There was no future for them. In the days that followed the Hua's departure, Bai Qian was a broken woman. She retreated to the peach blossom forest of Xi'an, seeking solace in the wine he brewed. She spent her days in a drunken haze, lost in memories. In her stupor, she would often see him, illusions of the Hua, standing among the peach trees, smiling at her with that gentle, loving expression she missed so dearly. She would run to him, wrapping her arms around the empty air where he stood, whispering to the phantom. She would tell him how she often considered just disappearing, vanishing into nothingness, just like him, hoping she could see him again, was more painful than his absence. So, she decided it was better to keep living, to keep drinking, because at least in her drunken daydreams, she could still see his smile. But every time she reached out to touch his face, the illusion would shatter like glass, leaving her alone once more. Her heart breaking all over again in the silent, blooming forest. Bai Zuan couldn't bear to see Zhao Wu tormenting herself like this, and angrily said, "She's lived for so long. How can she still not let go of life and death?" Bai Qian was full over the long river.
The night was deep and quiet, and Bai Qian had nothing to do but go to sleep.
In her dream, Bai Qian finally met the Hua. The Hua sat in a peach grove, looking up with a gentle smile and asking, "Tell me about the story you read yesterday." In the dream, the Hua explained that he had no connection with the puppets in the mortal realm. They were merely hired to serve his mother. He also explained that he had never truly looked at Sujin since childhood, and who Sujin married was none of his concern. He further stated that he never fell in love with Bai Qian because Sujin had Bai Qian nestled beside the Hua, repeatedly saying, She knew everything. In the dream, everything was so beautiful and sweet. Bai Qian was immersed in this dream, knowing that after becoming the queen of Qingku, Fengju could no longer disregard her status and go to Chun Palace to serve tea and keep the emperor company. Fengju was worshipped by all the people of Qing. Siming brought Fengju a congratulatory gift from the emperor. The emperor gave Fengju a map depicting his past battles with his father, the god of war, across the 4 seas and 8 wastelands. Siming told Fengju that once she opened the map, she would understand that the 4 seas and 8 wastelands had changed beyond recognition, and everything depicted on the map no longer existed. Compared to the vastness of the world, some things were insignificant and not worth remembering. In Taken Palace, the emperor saw Fengju's appearance as the successor to the queen through a bronze mirror.
When the empress stood up, the crimson foxtail around his waist was particularly dazzling.
Bai Qian and Bai Zuan were watching a play in the mortal realm when they ran into Ziyu, who was also there to watch the play. Ziyu asked Bai Qian for a bead as a reward, and that's how the two met. For the past 3 years, Bai Zun had been taking Bai Qian on a journey across the world, hoping that she could wake up from her grief over the Hua. Bai Qian simply said that ever since she dreamed of the Hua 3 years ago, she had treated the dream as real and the reality as an illusion. Life was no different. It was just a different way of living. And this way of living made her happy and content, so she could be considered to have a clear understanding of life. That she also felt that the Heavenly Emperor's punishment of Sujin was a bit too harsh. Perhaps because of the Hua. Now that Sujin had repaid what she owed, the rest was no longer her concern. Bai Qian and Bai Zuan were a little tired from their walk, so they decided to find a place to rest and have some tea. They happened to run into Yan Zhe, who had left the winged realm and was now making a living by running a tea stall in the mortal world. Yan Zhe was overjoyed to see Si Yin again and introduced her to her second brother, Li Jing's child, a cute and well-behaved little girl. Yan Zhe sighed, saying that she and Si Yin had seen each other since the battle at the Ruhashui River 70,000 years ago. Now, seeing them again, everything had changed. Just then, little Ali, accompanied by Jai Yun and the others, ran over to find Bai Qian. Ali sadly asked Bai Qian why she hadn't visited him in 3 years, wondering if his mother had abandoned him. Bai Qian comforted him, saying that she had been asleep for over 3 years and had just woken up, preparing to go to the Heavenly Palace to find her. Bai Qian asked Ali where he was going, and Ali hesitated before telling his mother that he was going to the Boundless Sea. Bai Qian brought Ali to the Boundless Sea. Ali, seeing Bai Qian's sorrowful expression, asked if his mother missed their father. Bai Qian told Ali that she had always missed her father. Her father had left behind 2 sons, her master and her husband. From now on, she would have no other men in her eyes. Just then, Xilan emerged from the Boundless Sea and led Bai Qian and the others to the Xuanjing Coffin. 3 years had passed. Bai Qian had waited for the Hua for 3 years. Looking at the Xuanjing Coffin, Bai Qian thought, now you can finally rest. You no longer have to think about reading those mountains of official documents, nor do you have to fight on all sides every day. Bai Zuan quietly took Ali away, leaving Bai Qian and the Hua alone. Not long after, Bai Qian and the others left the boundless sea. A vast expanse of immortal energy surrounded the Hua's crystal coffin. Even in the heavenly palace, hundreds of birds sang in unison. The heavenly emperor and the others were amazed, wondering how the Hua, whose soul had already been scattered, could be protected by such a powerful immortal energy. Sang Ji exclaimed that perhaps the Hua was not dead after all. The heavenly emperor invited Mo Yuan to the boundless sea to investigate. Mo Yuan examined the Hua's primordial spirit and understood. Mo Yuan thought that if it weren't for the crystal coffin and the boundless sea, 17 would probably have had to wait many more years. Finally, the Hua woke up. Mo Yuan told the Hua that the cenotaph Bai Qian had made for him was in the 10-mile peach blossom forest. The Hua finally called out to Mo Yuan, "Brother!" The Hua knelt before the heavenly emperor and the others, and then rushed to the peach blossom forest. Jiu arrived at the opera house and ran into Bai Qian, who was watching the opera alone. Jiu was a person who couldn't keep a secret, so she told Bai Qian that she had a cousin who was extremely handsome. No woman in heaven or earth could take her eyes off him, but he was short-lived and died on the battlefield at a young age, leaving behind his grieving parents and a child who cried all day long. However, for some reason, they thought that her cousin's soul had been scattered, so they placed his immortal body in the Xuanjing Coffin in the Wuwang Sea. But today, for some reason, the Wuwang Sea was churning up huge waves, and the area around the Xuanjing Coffin was filled with immortal energy. Her parents said that perhaps her cousin was not dead at all. If that were the case, then little Li wouldn't have to cry all day long. A sudden silence fell over the surroundings. Bai Qian asked dryly, "Is that the sea of nothingness?" "And your cousin? Is your cousin the crown prince, the Hua of the heavenly clan?" Ziyu stammered, "How did you know? Have I missed some heavenly secret?" Bai Qian stumbled out of the tea house and flew towards the heavenly palace on a cloud. When she rushed into the washing Watang Palace, she grabbed a fairy and asked, "Where is the Hua? Where is the Hua?" The fairy replied, "Wasn't the crown prince buried in the sea of nothingness?" Bai Qian's heart sank to the bottom of a cut of Shiwu Palace and saw Mo Yuan. She slipped and almost fell, but Mo Yuan caught her steadily. Bai Qian asked anxiously, "Master, where is the Hua? Where is the Hua?" Mo Yuan comforted Bai Qian. "I was just about to talk to you about this." Mo Yuan told Bai Qian that back then, the Father God used half of his divine power to condense the Hua's primordial spirit into a golden lotus. After the Hua was reincarnated, this divine power remained with him. Later, the Hua slew 4 divine beasts and obtained the other half of the Father God's divine power. The Hua used the entirety of the Father God as divine power to counter the heaven-destroying power of the Eastern Emperor Bel. His primordial spirit was somewhat damaged by the clash between these two forces, and thus spontaneously fell into a deep sleep. That's why Bai Qian thought he had already perished. However, the Xuanjing Coffin and the boundless sea were sacred places for recuperation, so the Hua only slept for 3 years before waking up. Lesson in love, showing that sometimes the greatest act of love is to let go and ensure the other person's happiness, even from a distance. But now, for the moment we've all been holding our breath for. In the celestial realm, Mo Yuan finds Bai Qian and says the words she has been dreaming of. The Hua has returned. He's gone to the peach blossom forest to find you. Go quickly. Bai Qian doesn't hesitate. She flies back to her home, stumbling through the familiar trees, her voice trembling as she calls his name. Suddenly, sunlight breaks through the clouds, bathing the entire forest in a heavenly, eternal glow. And there, standing beneath the blossoms, is a figure in black robes. It's him. He's leaning forward, his long fingers gently stroking the tombstone she had made for him. The scene is so perfect, so serene. It feels like a dream.
Bai Qian can barely breathe.
The young man turns, and a slight smile plays on his lips. It's the same exquisite face, the same jet black hair from the day they first met. In that moment, the rest of the world fades away. There's no color, no sound, just him. He reaches out his hand, and his voice is a soft whisper that cuts through 3 years of silence. Qianchen, come here!
Later, she's nestled safely in his arms, right where she belongs.
She tells him how, for 3 long years, she slept day and night, just so she could dream of him, dream of them playing chess and talking together. The Hua softly promises her he won't sleep anymore. He's here to stay. Still, Bai Qian gently touches his face, afraid this is just another beautiful illusion. But the Hua looks into her eyes and tells her, word for word, that this is not a dream. He is alive, he is real, and he is right here with her. He begins to recount their journey. He reminds her of their first meeting on Mount Zhengyi, when she, in her mortal form, cared for him as a little black snake. He tells her how he stayed by her side to repay that kindness, a debt that blossomed into a love that would span lifetimes. He speaks of their time in the Heavenly Palace, the heartbreak of Susu jumping from the execution platform, and the moment of rediscovery in the Western Sea. Through 3 lives and 3 worlds, whether she was the mortal Susu or the goddess Bai Qian, she was, and always will be, his only true love. As they stand together in Jian's 10-mile, peach blossom forest, surrounded by the beautiful scenery where it all began, the Hua smiles. He looks at the woman he fought heaven and earth to return to, and with a playful, loving tone, he repeats a line from their past, bringing their entire story full circle. The Hua is unaware that you are the goddess Bai Qian of Qing, and with that, their epic love story finally gets its happily ever after. What a journey it's been. What was your favorite part of their reunion? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. See you next time.